Hi. So I was thinking, I've been sewing for 15 years and I feel like if I've been sewing for 15 years, I've learned a few things. So I thought I'm gonna share 15 things I've learned over the last 15 years that I've been sewing. I also went to Instagram to ask you guys for some tips because I know a lot of you are probably way better than I am at sewing and been doing it way longer. So I've included some of those tips that I thought were the best in these 15 tips. Tip number 1, if you rush and cut corners, it's gonna turn out bad. It's gonna. Every time I have rushed it or cut corners, it never turns out as good as I want it to be. Like it turns out okay, or sometimes it actually turns out terrible. But every time I rush and cut corners, it's just not great. It's not something I'm proud of. It's not something I wanna wear. It's just regrets. Number 2, making clothes is an investment. So my recommendation is to really invest, like buy good quality pieces, invest your time into it, do a lot of researching, do a lot of learning, because overall it's a big investment. It's a big investment in time, and it's also a big investment in money. It's not cheap to get started, but you know, I guess along the road and you get all the good quality supplies, it should last you a really long time. So it's something that you should, you know, consider when you're going into this, buy secondhand, because then you can get a better quality machine for cheaper. 3, patterns. This is where I love to get my patterns. So 1 is a thrift store. If you guys don't want to have a printer at home and print them out and cut them all up, put them together, there's tons of great patterns at the thrift store. Number 2, if you do have a printer, you can get free patterns online. You can get them from Mood, which I've also done a ton of videos showing and showcasing my favorite free patterns, or just patterns from other designers that they put on Etsy or their website. I'll link some of the videos down before where I found like my favorite patterns, so you guys can go and get them for free, purchase them, whatever. But I don't buy patterns from like the fabric store, either the thrift store, because you can get like really cool vintage ones, or online. Number 4, buy nice pins and pin your fabric. Do you ever have an idea come in your head where you're like, hey, I'm not gonna pin this seam, I'm just gonna flop them together and then sew? Don't. I do that all the time still, and pretty much 90% of the time I do that, I sew it, mess it up, seam rip it, pin it, then sew it. So honestly, just skip that step of like sewing and then seam ripping and just pin it the first time and they'll be perfect. Number 5, mock-ups. This is one that has really changed my sewing. If I sew a mock-up before I cut into my nice fabric, it's day and night better. Like to practice something before you actually remake it again in your nice fabric, it turns out like 100 times better. Like the quality, your seams, everything is so much better, because then you can see if it fits nicely, how it looks, and then you can change it from there instead of like ruining your good fabric, seam ripping, and then you know sometimes the seams just don't look very good after you seam rip them like 48 times. Make a mock-up. You can get cheap fabric. You can even use like a bed sheet, an old bed sheet from a thrift store, cut that up, make a mock-up. So we're just gonna take a quick break from the video because today's video is sponsored by Besties. And if you guys have not heard of Besties before, they are this amazing company that creates these waterproof sneakers. So I actually got my first pair of Besties back in 2018 because I have dogs. They need to go out multiple times a day. Doesn't matter if it's raining or shining sun, they need to go out. And that's why I love my Besties, because these keep my feet nice and dry. No water in my shoes. A few other things I love about my Bestie is 1, they are super comfy, like walking on clouds. 2, very lightweight. And 3, really easy to clean. But most importantly, Besties are 100% waterproof, not water resistant, waterproof. So that means you can go through puddles, you can go into the water, you can splash them, walk through rain, whatever it is, they will stay 100% dry. So if you guys want to get your own pair of Besties, use my link down below in the description. I have the Everyday Move sneaker here, so I'll have that link down below. And if you guys want to get 15% off your order, be sure to use my code JennaPhipps at checkout and you'll get 15% off. Number 6, nothing will ever be perfect, especially in sewing. I have never made a perfect garment. I've been sewing for 15 years, and to this day, I can see flaws in every single one of my pieces. They can be subtle, where I'm like, hey, I just wish I used this material instead of this, or I wish I used a different stabilizer, or I wish I changed the length, or I wish I didn't cut that way, I wish I didn't cut that this way, I wish I didn't waste it. Like, it's impossible to be perfect when you're making your own clothes unless you're doing a mock-up like 78 times before you actually get to your good fabric. Then maybe you make it that many times, it might be perfect by the end. But personally, I only make like one mock-up before I cut into my good fabric, so unless you got all year to make a project, it's probably not gonna be perfect. Number 7. This one actually took me years to figure out, and it is getting the correct needle for your fabric and also using a sharp needle when you're sewing. I used to use needles until they broke. I never changed my needle, and I would always have issues with the machine or the stitching, or I just have issues. And it wasn't until I realized, hey, it's the needle causing my issues like 90% of the time, that all I do is just get new needles and switch them, and it's solved. So more of a story. If you're having issues with your machine, it might be your needle or how you thread your machine. Either those are my two, tricks. When I go and I have issues with my machine, it's 1, rethread my machine. If that doesn't work, then 2, it might be your needle. Hi, Jicky. Hi, Jicky. Oh, Jicky. Hi. Number 8, always buy more fabric. I don't know how many times you've probably seen me in videos where I run out of fabric and I have to go back to the store and buy, or yarn. Like, it's one of the two. Either it's a knitting and a crochet project and I've run out of yarn and I have to go back to the store like 58 times, or it's sewing with fabric and I have to go back to the store 58 times because I run out of fabric, or I messed up and I needed more. So I recommend always going on the extra side rather than the less side. Just like, don't be cheap, just buy a little more, because you might cut something wrong and then have to recut it. It's just, you save time. You save time, time is money, so just get a little bit more, like even half a yard. You don't have to get like 4 more yards, like you have to redo the whole thing, just like a little bit more. Number 9, YouTube. YouTube is your best friend. You're sitting here watching this video right now. Why? I don't know why. I can't really answer that for you, but when I'm sitting watching YouTube, it's either because I want to be entertained or I want to learn something. And I pretty much learned everything I know with sewing from YouTube. Other than the basics when I learned it in grade 8, but everything else, like pattern making, drafting, draping, everything like that, I learned from YouTube. We live in an incredible world right now where you can legit just type what you want on the internet and then it gives you answers. Like, there's even people out there that make videos to give you those answers. Like, mind is blowing up. Number 10, this one kind of overlaps with one I've already talked about, like buying quality pieces, like, investing. But this one goes a little bit more specific because I'm saying buy the correct things for your machine, for your supplies. Just try to buy the correct things, like do a little research, because I've also run into issues where I've had the wrong bobbins for my machine and want to throw my head through a wall because my machine doesn't work, it gets tangled, it gets knotted, and all I had to do was buy the correct bobbins. Like, I got them from Walmart, and I found out later, you don't buy bobbins from Walmart for my machine. Maybe for some machines, but make sure you have the right ones. Number 11, press your seams. This is something I cut corners and don't do all the time. It's something I'm trying, because every time I do press my seams, it's just like, holy crap, I'm a professional. This looks like this sold at Nordstrom. Like, it's incredible how much better your pieces come when you press your seams. So press your seams when you're sewing, not just at the end. Like, as you go, like you sew a couple lines, press those seams, Number 12, maintain your machines. If you went out and you bought a nice machine, or you have a machine you're using regularly or not even that regularly, if you're using a machine, you should be maintaining it. And that means you take it to your local sewing place and you get them to do a nice little maintenance job on it that's all running well. Or if you have a machine like mine where I actually have like a semi-industrial one, you gotta oil it. You gotta dust it out, you gotta clean it. You gotta dust out all your machines and clean it, but specifically with mine, you oil it, which it's like not putting oil in your car. It won't work very well for long if you don't maintain it. Number 13, take breaks. This is something you're gonna do whatever you're doing in life, you need to take breaks. Well, not everything, but take breaks when you're sewing. I don't know if that one really applies to everything in life, but most things in life, you do need to take breaks. You need to let your body rest. So that's the same for sewing. Like sometimes I'm just sewing like way too long and I'm just getting exhausted, and then I'm just starting to make mistakes left, right, and center. It's just, you know, becoming a real bad show. No one wants to watch a bad show. So make sure you take breaks, refresh, and then come back to it, because you are working with a machine. Like you could really hurt yourself technically. No needles through your finger. Number 14. This one, it's just a reality check that it takes a lot of times to get something good. So you really want to enjoy the process of sewing, because off the bat, you're gonna be terrible. I don't know what to say. I look at well, maybe you're not gonna be terrible. Like some people are gonna be more terrible than others. But like my first piece, it was okay. It also took me like 4 months to do, so that's why, and I had a teacher helping me. But if I was doing it on my own and I was trying to rush it like I would do, terrible. Because when I started to make things on my own, I thought, oh yeah, I can do this in a couple hours, and then terrible. Last one, number 15. Fix the small things. This is one I got from Instagram, and it was so good. I was like, yes, it's so true. When you have a little flaw in something you're making, and you're like, that's okay, I don't really care, I don't want to seam rip it and fix it. And then you keep going, and then that problem gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you're like, oh gosh, this is terrible, and you have to seam rip and then go fix that one, you know, mistake that you thought wasn't a big deal. Yeah. This is a great analogy. If anyone's done origami and you start off and you start folding and they're not lining up, by the time you get to the end of the origami, it's gonna look like a crumpled up piece of paper. Not gonna look good. Same with sewing. If things aren't lined up at the beginning, not gonna look great in the end. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have another video coming out on Sunday, so stay tuned for that, but subscribe. Bye. Oh!